Right, so I was requested to reiterate and redo my speech that I was going to do at Women Against Societal Odds here on Facebook Live afterwards. So I'm going to do just that. Okay? So I was talking on women in at the Women Against Societal Odds conference, and let's get the show on the road. Anyone that challenges the status quo will be punished. Women who hold positions of power have gone beyond challenging the status quo. They've somehow overcome it, which often leaves people bewildered. What we need to accept is that politics is not just in parliament, so it's not just in DA, ANC, and EFF, but it dwindles down to our day-to-day lives. This is highlighted in the less popular definition of politics, which is activities aimed at improving someone's, status or increasing power within an organization. The origin of the word politics says it all. So it's derived from the Greek word politis, which means citizens. When women rise to power, they've simply figured out how to improve their status in the organization to which they belong. This is not an easy task. My focus today was on the South African society and the different places within it where women are given positions of power, and then the odds that within those spaces. But this is also looking at it from my personal experiences and observations, the things that I've seen happening. Okay, so within a family setup, most South African ethnicities are patrilineal, meaning that the descent is through the male line, making the patriarchs or the man of the house the chief decision maker in the family. So it's a taboo for a family to have girls only, and why there's a requirement to have a son, because the lineage in that family is carried forward by a male, not a woman. So, times have changed. Okay, times have changed. We found that we have now matrilineal families. Okay, with the normalization of having a child out of wedlock, adoption, surrogacy, and same-sex led homes. Furthermore, the access to knowledge has now caused a shift of power in the family. So now you find in a family gathering, a young girl, from university or whatever, is asked to participate in the decision making in the family. That's because there's knowledge now. So the power has shifted. It's not only one particular person in the family who has knowledge. Women have always had a voice in their families, but they've only had that voice at a later stage in their lives when they're elderly, and if they have sponsorship or support from their father or a prominent male figure in the family. It's a common pattern that I've observed that women who tend to aspire for positions of power male guardians, and it permeates into their performance in school. Unfortunately, women who attain power outside the family setup, so when they grow up and they become older, when they become powerful again, they get punished for it. As would in anything, they get punished for it, because the places of power aren't equitable and aren't accommodating towards women, and they often have to forfeit the role of being a mother and a wife to be where they are. My solution in this area is to foster good relationships with the elderly people in your family, and at a later stage in your life, like when you decide that you want to enter into a marital relationship, be clear about who you are and the aspirations that you have, so you can get assistance from your family and your spouse. you know, like you need to talk about these things, about looking after kids and the line of work you're in. You need to be honest. If you're a politician, if you're working in government, you need to be honest with your spouse that, you know what, I can't do certain things in the house. I'm out, I come back from, state visits, and then I have to come home late, 10 o'clock. I have a busy schedule, I'm flying here and there. You need to have these chats, and you need to be honest about who you are and what you want to be. A girl who has a voice at home is easy to identify in the school environment. I can't speak for anyone, but I noticed a shift within me when I transitioned from a co-ed school, and which is an environment where there's boys and girls, and moved into a girls' school only. The playing field was the same. Okay, yes, I was the minority among I was the minority among white students, but somehow, things felt a bit fairer. I felt more daring and able to do more, and the proof is in the numbers. About 87% of girls in single-sex schools feel their opinions are respected, as opposed to 58% in co-ed schools, and only 44% of girls in co-ed schools feel challenged to reach their academic potential. As I don't know what happens really. Like, I don't know what happens in a co-ed environment, especially when you become a teenager. I think there's just a lot, the changes in your body, and your hips are getting wider, and your I don't know, your body is changing, and obviously your confidence levels aren't as great, and then to top that off, there's males around to make that just difficult. But I can attest to these numbers. Being in an all-girls school, my confidence just shot up, and it helped me a lot when I moved into tertiary education, because I was blind to gender barriers. So there wasn't like boys do this, girls do that, and I found myself quickly jumping into executive positions. I found myself in executive position at about first year. I was already shooting for Secretary General, because I was just so blind that girls can't do it. Like, I didn't have that mentality. So important, to get confidence from home, to be in an environment at school that is, accommodative to a young woman. And I'd suggest for educators to set the tone in their classes by making it very clear that every student is equal and valued within the classroom. Institutions of learning need to also make policies that allow both the male and the female student to thrive, right? The school has to have clear consequences of discriminatory behavior towards another based on race, religion, gender, or sexuality. Institutions of learning should take decisive action on sexual assault, rape, violence. Whether, I know that violence seems like a normal thing, but it shouldn't be. Children should feel safe in the educational institution. From basic education to tertiary level, you should feel safe in the school you're in. And what is most important in the educational institutional environment, the humanity in the student should be prioritized. That should be the priority of the school, that the university, that the humanity in the student is preserved, regardless of where they come from, what they believe, and who they are. Okay? Now, unfortunately, I can't speak on other religions, but I've observed it's quite difficult for women to be in positions of power in religious organizations, right? In the Abrahamic religions, the sacred and most powerful positions, like being a rabbi, a mullah, imam, bishop, priest, or pastor, are reserved for males. And I grew up in a Christian Pentecostal charismatic environment, and I observed that the highest position when I was a child, let me say this, when I was a child, the highest position of power that anyone as a kid was being an elder's wife, or a bishop so and so's wife, or pastor so and so's wife, But as time went by, more people acquired knowledge, and they stripped off their cultural interpretation of religious texts. And then I started seeing women being given platform. They were allowed to preach, they were allowed to take leadership roles and be ordained as, leaders, pastors, or whatever. And even then, the female ministers were made to prove their legitimacy more, are still made to prove their legitimacy twice as more than male ministers. But similar to the family setup, women flourish in positions of power when they are a male colleague, a father, or they are married to a prominent man of God. Then, like, wow, they flourish, like they stay the most anointed woman on earth. Unfortunately, I don't have solutions like on how to remain powerful in a religious organization. But I would say that if you feel like you're called to lead a religious organization, get qualifications, go to theology school, go to Bible school, just even get a psychology degree, like get something, and then you can do it for life, because you can't depend on your father's backing. You can't depend on your husband's backing if you want to aspire to lead an organization for life. Am I clear? I hope so. And rising to power in the workplace depends on which sector you belong to as a woman. Okay, the public sector or government is much more accommodating towards women in comparison to the private sector. Okay, the government controls how companies can do business, but it doesn't have an influence on the culture or the politics in the organization. That needs to be made clear. So until you as a woman figure out how you're going to increase your status and power in that organization, your qualifications are not enough, because we've seen in these big companies women who have MBAs, who have all these, like they have a shelf full of certificates, working in junior positions. So you need to know the politics in the organization to get to the top, my sister. The hardest facts that I've had to give. So the first thing that you need to unlearn, and the thing that I'm also unlearning, is the tiara syndrome. Okay, so I used to have it too, where you feel like when you work hard and you give your best and you excel at work, people will notice you and then just, crown you with a promotion or acknowledgement. Unfortunately, Lala, this is the workplace. You have to speak for yourself. You have to advocate for yourself. Okay, you need to challenge yourself. You need to challenge your colleagues, and you need to challenge the status quo in the organization so that you can get to where you need to be. Secondly, learn to negotiate. Know what you bring to the table. Be aware of your strengths and your weaknesses. All right. And another thing, don't be a know-it-all. Don't do it. Continuously acquire knowledge. Get knowledge. Knowledge is power. Go read because now I'm not at the conference, this is my account, I can tell you this. Go read Proverbs 20 verse 15. Okay, knowledge you can have. Learning doesn't only take place at school or at university. There's many other places where you need to prepare yourself to learn, and always be inquisitive. understand the history and the ethos and the culture of the organization that you're in. Please, I'm begging you. Don't just know only that you're there to do what you're there to do and leave. Be saturated, understand the culture, the ethos, the history of the organization you're working for, so that you can, think forward as to where you're moving next within that organization. And know the function of the other departments. Very important. It's like, the thing is simple. It's like when you're at home, you know what you do. You know how things are supposed to go. You're not like, even if umuntu washizija at home, right? You don't just not know the house. You remain aware of the other things, and you're aware that if someone is not pulling their weight, you can pull your weight too. Same goes at work. Be open-minded. Know the function of other departments in the businesses. And finally, ignorance in life in general is not bliss. So get knowledge. Be prepared all the time. Be prepared all the time. And that's it. That's all I had to say at the Women Against Societal Odds conference seminar. I'm learning as well. I'm not perfect. I'm a work in progress that just strives for perfection on a daily basis. And I'm hoping that in the years to come, I've acquired more knowledge and wisdom to impart and share with everyone. But I appreciate the invitation that I got from Miss Banda and the other people in the organization at the Women Against All Odds conference. So thank you for listening to me, and I hope that this was informative. Have a blessed evening. I'm tired.